Well, my topic, good afternoon everyone. My topic is exploring the bioethical principle of vulnerability in the context of the global challenge of climate change. I particularly liked this global. I thought it was a very good word because, as our previous speakers told, whatever happens in the whole affects us locally, and whatever we do affects the whole world. So I call it a reflection and a call to us as bioethicists, and especially as the ABP. This is a picture of the place I live in. It's Patna, Bihar. It's the year 2015. And these are our people. And they go like this, without shoes, on this kind of horrible ground, all rugged and broken, dry, on their cycles. And the reason why I thought of choosing this topic today was because suddenly in July, very hot day, it was the first Sunday of July, the temperature was 46 degrees. And a lady came running into our house and said, please come fast, don't ask any questions. So I just went, and there was a husband lying on the bed there, and she said, he's so hot. So we got cold compresses from the fridge, and we tried to reduce the temperature. And I went on and on and on with this, but no reduction in temperature at all. And then he was taken to the hospital, and can you believe it, he was pronounced 4 hours dead. The heat had just gone into him somewhere, and the temperature control in the brain was not able to function anymore. And this is what made me feel that maybe I should look into this concept of climate change and the whole idea of vulnerability of our universe. He was not a poor man. They had an AC in their home. He was lying on his bed. I was thinking, what would happen to the number of people who are like this? This type of person, who has only the cycle, and sometimes the cycle doesn't even work. So that's the reason why I chose this topic. Focus of this presentation is like this: the power of a single idea, environmental vulnerability, moral responses to vulnerability, and a call to us as bioethicists and members of the ABP. Warren Reich, who is a founder member of the Kennedy Institute of Bioethics and the editor of the Encyclopedia of Bioethics, has written a paper on this topic, the power of a single idea. He says, the most powerful influence wielded by bioethics on the evolution of societies can be found in the world of ideas even more than in the world of controversial public policies. Similarly, the future evolution of bioethics itself will depend more on the struggle over ideas than on its persuasion in the area of public policy or its interaction with clinical behaviors and policies. He goes on, I am convinced that the single most important idea that will shape both the external influence and the internal development of bioethics is the idea of vulnerability. If vulnerability fails to emerge as a major idea during the next generation of bioethics, both our field of learning and societies at large will be the poorer for it. I was very interested that the day before I left here for Manila, our Reserve Bank of India Governor Rajan says that all ideas should be scrutinized critically, whether they have matured over thousands of years or in a few minutes, whether they come from an untutored student or a world-famous professor. We heard this morning how a student made a big difference to the program. Without this competition for ideas, we have stagnation. So I would like to say, last year I presented something on vulnerability, and many people came to me afterwards and said, vulnerability. And I thought, well, let's see whether really it's a principle worth having or not. Vulnerability Vulnerability is a bioethical principle. In a scope note number 44, vulnerability, says Mary Roof, is an abstract concept that has concrete effects, both for those labeled vulnerable and for those not. The concept, and consequently the criteria designating vulnerable populations, remains vague. Alexander Morava, of the Journal of International Relations and Development in 2003, says there is no single approach to the definition of vulnerability. In fact, there is no purposeful categorization at all. Is it a concern? Is it a concept? Ruth Macklin in 2003 says, vulnerability is a concern in bioethics. We should know which criteria count as exploitation and which efforts at protection may be paternalism. And Nicholson, 2002. Vulnerability remains a useful concept, and the attempts to define it in regulations showed that, in fact, we should regard every research subject as vulnerable until proved otherwise on an individual basis. Is there utility to vulnerability? Vulnerability is difficult to define, say these authors, yet it is important to do so because it captures significant aspects of marginalized groups. And Robert Greene, 1985, much before any talk of vulnerability came in, said, vulnerability is essential to bioethics. The vulnerability of other human beings is a source of our responsibility to them. Michael Cotto of Chile, vulnerability is more accurately been understood as an anthropological description of the human condition. However, it is fundamental enough to inspire bioethical requirements of protection and respect for human rights in the wake of social justice. And it's a welcome enrichment of principlist bioethics. So it seems that we are on the right lines going with the European conventions rather than going with the Kennedy Institute and the Georgetown Mantra. Peter Ken says, but the principles are not rules for moral conduct as we used to think, but rather they are practical, valuable aspects of the good life. Vulnerability recognizes the fragility of an intact but destructible totality and therefore takes into account biological, social, and cultural characteristics of human beings living in the modern technological world. Now, I know that I'm not referring to the anthropological thing now, I'm really referring to the environment. So we take it a little further. It would be impossible to work towards good quality of life if no account were made of the damage that can occur from internal and outside influences. Vulnerability plays a major role in several philosophies. Continental philosophy we know very well, Levinas, it was mentioned this morning, Habermas, Paul Ricoeur, virtue ethics, analytical philosophy of welfare, North American feminist philosophy and first world feminist theology all have vulnerability as the principle. Initial efforts have been made in medical bioethics, again as we saw, Rendorf, who is really on the European side, Alistair Campbell, Edmund Pellegrino, and Richard Zena. And very interesting aspect, environmental bioethics, through this gentleman, he's a poet actually, who's written about 25 books, the volumes of his poems on the environment, looking at the ethical and other implications, socioeconomic implications of the environment. Based on the experience of vulnerability and many forms of suffering, all the above philosophies, says Warren Wright, are pressing in one way or another towards a more universalized ethic of care. What about environmental vulnerability? It's a new way of viewing an age-old problem. Instead of looking back at efforts on hazards and levels of risk, it is a future-focused approach. It uses strengths, strategically improves weaknesses, and the tendency to be damaged and resilience, which is the ability to recover from injury, are increasingly found in the scientific literature today. If you go to the scientific literature, you'll find that from the year 1995 to 2003, the number of articles that dealt with resilience doubled and went from 0.7 million to 1.4 million number of times that resilience was mentioned in the literature. Vulnerability management is emerging as a critical part of any sustainable development strategy. So I looked up and found some vulnerability indicators for our environment. Environmental vulnerability is characterized by 3 components: hazards, damage, and resistance. 50 SMART indicators, SMART is the word now, 7 policy relevant sub-indices are used to capture key elements of environmental vulnerability. Some examples, I've got 50 of them. High winds, dry, wet, cold periods, waste production and treatment, volcanoes, tsunamis, temperatures, reserves, spills, industry, mining, biotech, vehicles, emissions, tourists, population, sanitation, conflicts. These are just examples of EVI indicators. And then there are sub-indices: climate change, biodiversity, human health aspects, water, agriculture, fisheries, desertification, exposure to natural disasters. They've also graded from 1 to 13 are supposed to be resilient countries, 14 to 56 at-risk countries, 57 to 139 vulnerable countries, 140 to 199 highly vulnerable, and 200 to 234 extremely vulnerable. So, just have a look. We look at the extremely vulnerable. Philippines, 228. Japan, 221. India, 216. Pakistan, 206. Highly vulnerable. North Korea, 198. China, 194. Turkey, 183. Bangladesh, 169. Sri Lanka, 159. Taiwan, 151. Indonesia, 14. Vulnerable. Malaysia, 133, Hong Kong, 128, Thailand, 127, Nepal, 121. And one very good one, at risk, Australia, 28. So somehow or the other, Australia manages to get back on its feet on her feet. Countries of the world have begun preparing already. In recent years, global change research has worked towards a common definition of vulnerability to move beyond the immediate intuitive understanding and towards an operational concept of vulnerability. And the work was done in Germany, in this Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. The title of the paper was Vulnerability Assessment, Analyzing the Human Environment System in the Face of Global Environmental Change, 2000, and it was done with EU funding, the 5th Framework Project. They said that they suggest the following definition, which emerges from the most recent conceptual developments. That global change vulnerability is the likelihood that a specific coupled human environment system will experience harm from exposure to stresses associated with alterations of societies and the environment, accounting for the process of adaptation. In this definition, a vulnerable entity is the human environment system. Potential stressors that impact the system are the multiple global change drivers such as socioeconomic change, land use change, and climate change. And the term coupled human environment system acknowledges the fact that humans are users, actors, and managers. They're not external, but they're integral elements of the studied system. Vulnerability then is the likelihood or probability of harm to a system, such as, for example, the declining quality of life or loss of lives. This likelihood is determined by the likelihood of potential impacts and the system's adaptive capacity or resilience. The process of adaptation can decrease vulnerability. So what is the objective of vulnerability assessments? To inform the decision-making of stakeholders about options for adapting to global change impacts. People and organizations with specific interests are supposed to be these stakeholders. So it was shown to them, and the global change vulnerability assessments were linking broadly with the aim of sustainability science, where successful research is measured not only by scientific merit, but also by the usefulness of the resulting products and recommendations. So they should lead to improved decision-making, better dialogue between stakeholders and policymakers, that is, more sustainable management of the human environment system. Should satisfy these criteria, should have a knowledge base from all the disciplines and stakeholder participation, should be based at the sub-country level, should consider multiple stresses, examine different adaptive capacities, and be prospective as well as historic. Now, it has to be remembered that perceived well-being as well as anticipated vulnerability is always based on a value judgment. And at the end of their study, this study in Germany, the conclusion drawn was this: the anticipated future ability of stakeholders to adapt to change, it was for them that this whole study was done, was a matter of personal perception, and they preferred to use whatever their study presented as digital vulnerability maps. They preferred to use them as guidelines to explore their own vulnerability, using knowledge about their own adaptive capacity and their own individual values. They didn't consider that this study was worth much. This is what our poet says. We pretend that nothing happens, and what is happening is the demolition of the world. And it's in this thing called Breathing with the Other, Ethics and Eco-Socialist Perspective in the Poetry of Your Era. It's translated from Spanish. See some pictures of 2014, which was the hottest year since 1850. Cattle resting with a heat wave in Australia. Drinking water in Delhi coming free. Drawing water from a well in Pakistan. See how many people have to help because the well is so deep and there's very little water. Frying bacon on the top of a car in China. Indonesia, a single flower growing. A horse dying in Nicaragua and being dragged away. Zimbabwe, they're looking for maize where it can't be found. And scooping water from a dry, parched earth in Guinea. 2015, the year of the Conference of the Parties, 21, November 30th to December 11th. The French President, François Hollande, said, if nations can meet, there were to be more than 196 nations, and agree equitable goals on climate, on economic development, on social and environmental issues, and do so in a spirit of cooperation, it will be a great achievement. But that would be for a miracle. How do we promote ecological citizenship? It's this article which I found very perceptive. This Dr. Carmen Melo Escrimuela. He has written on this concept, promoting ecological citizenship. Citizenship has been a hot topic of debate within the Greek literature since the 1990s. Citizenship and ethics are one, Aristotle says. Ethics is from the standpoint of the individual, citizenship is from the standpoint of the group. And the moral character of an ethical person is the same as set of characters or virtues needed to be a good citizen. We are citizens, not just consumers, says Sarkov. Our environment requires citizen preferences, not just consumer preferences. As citizens, we need to protect nature, not just buy, sell, and consume it. It has a dignity, not just a price. In promoting ecological citizenship, rights, duties, and political agency, this philosopher and scientist says, the term environmental citizenship was first used in 1990 by the Environment Canada Ministry of the Environment. As citizens of the world, it was said, we do not have a good history of managing our environment well. We have taken our resources for granted and have often abused the resources which we inherited. It's a deontological approach. You have to do your duty. Individual duty is stressed or collective responsibility as a path to a more sustainable society. The scientist goes on to say, however, that ecological citizenship, however it may be conceived, its definition and practical implications are typically related to some combination of the claiming of participatory rights and the fulfilling of duties. There's a right and a duty. And participatory rights, that means that each citizen has a right to know, has a right to do, and also follow what the legal laws of the land are. The limitation in both approaches is that they foment an individualistic conception of citizenship. But citizens are just encouraged to be good citizens, do their best, even sacrifice for the environment. But the structures of power and the capitalist economy that reproduce these ecological and social problems remain untouched. Citizens need the type of information that contextualizes the ecological crisis within a system encompassing social, economic, and political issues, and that helps citizens to identify injustice and not only environmental threats and relate it to the way that industrial societies are organized. It's quite an insightful article, I felt. Rather than going to the roots of the problem, institutional campaigns appeal to the citizens' ecological sensibility with messages related to health issues and welfare. This could be seen as an example of how the state is constrained, especially by the need to secure economic development without compromising investment. If industry is targeted, there might be consequences that undermine economic growth and development. And so, in this respect, citizens are an easier and less dangerous target than corporations. You use less water, you try not to use an AC, you go in for a frugal meal. Promoting ecological citizenship, rights, duties, and political agency, Carney says that we should have a civil society perspective. It could help overcome the individualism of participatory rights and duty-based models. And it allows for a collective understanding of ecological citizenship and the practices that it involves. There are some criticisms of the civil society approach. It could end up favoring those who have more time and resources and excluding those who cannot actively participate in public life. But maybe its location could be within a collective structure like an NGO or the community. Warning about strong links between civil society and the state should be independent of any institution and should be conceived outside the market and the state. Important that ecological citizenship should entail collective engagement in the creation of just and sustainable societies. So I was thinking, what is the role of bioethicists facing the global challenge of environmental vulnerability? Remember once Darryl said to us, what are we doing as ABA? Do we only have to have ABCs? Is there something else that we could do? And when I was looking at the net, I realized that UNESCO and OIBIOS, they say in Holland, OIBIOS have worked together very much on this challenge of global change, of climate change. I was wondering maybe we could, since now Darryl no longer belongs to, I don't know if he belongs to the UNESCO, that's a partnership. Maybe we could take it up as something where we're not working just as individuals, but we're working as global citizens. To end, Professor Warren Wright again, if a major worldwide rethinking of bioethics is carried out under the banner of vulnerability, bioethics will be capable of fostering a major impact on society in the next generation, and will at the same time become more credible as an academic and public enterprise. I'd like to end with our poet Rabindranath Tagore. I came to your shore as a stranger, I lived in your house as a guest, I leave your door as a friend, my love.
Thank you, Sister Daphne. Thank you. If you notice, there are, sorry.